Alright, so today we're going to be looking at WePlay and WePlay Motion Out of Bounds. I put this video off for a long time because I didn't think there'd be enough content to really even share on YouTube, but I figure, hey, you know what? Short or long, who cares? Let me get you something that you're going to enjoy. I'm your host, Shesez, and with that said, let's get going. So we'll start off with the main menu of WePlay, and obviously just seeing that the background is just a couple of textures layered on top of each other. But what's really interesting here is that you can see when the Miis load in, and some of them have unused animations that only go off for like a second before they switch over to an animation that's completely different. And going in sequential order here, we're going to start off with shooting range. What's honestly really great about this one is just breaking the immersion and showing you the various layers that are used to pull off the grass. And it's actually really funny to see that some of the grass isn't even placed on top of dirt geometry. But what's also kind of cool is that if you go over to this clay pigeon, you can see that there is something written on the top of it. It's just a 0110. And then we got the wee soda can here as well. And with this close-up, you can see the texturing of the top of the can, as well as nutritional information on the back, though it's just a series of lines to represent the actual wording. Also got you a close-up of the spaceships. Not much to say here. I just want to make sure that I added it in so that you guys got a chance to look at it. And then from there, we're going to do Find Me, which actually features a couple of different areas. It starts off with the crosswalk section. And if we zoom that out, we can see that the area is way bigger than you would imagine. Obviously, at times, the camera pans out while you're doing this minigame. But honestly, I had no idea that it was going to go out this far. And then from there was a swimming level. Panning the camera out can show you just how large that square is as well. But taking the camera underneath the top layer of the water can show you the texture that's used for the ocean's bottom. And then for the escalator, again, it goes way further than you would think. And what's really cool is that the escalators themselves are just a singular object that warps back to a starting position once it reaches a certain point. And all this happens so seamlessly that the player doesn't even notice. And then we'll talk about the last variant. But before we do that, I need to talk about today's sponsor. I'm super excited today about today's sponsor. It's King of Avalon, now featuring Hollywood movie star Orlando Bloom. Frost and Flame King of Avalon is a mobile strategy game that's based off of King Arthur, which I find really cool. If you want to play this game that's been downloaded over 100 million times by players around the globe, it's free to play, available in the App Store and Google Play. And if you've downloaded it before, there's all new content for the 6th anniversary. So here's the rundown. Your hometown's been run over by these guys known as the Unmelted. And as a last-ditch effort, you get this dragon egg that you have to incubate, all while gathering allies and defending your base against enemies. And if you want your time in King of Avalon to go a little bit smoother, here's the trick. You just download Orlando Bloom, or should I say Orlando the Night Shard, a free legendary hero only available for a limited time. You could also win tower defense battles, or you could just build and join alliances. Chances are one of your friends already has this game downloaded, but if not, you can also team up with global players in order to take down the enemies together. It's a super fun one, guys, so download Kings of Avalon right now using the link below or scan the QR code on the screen, where multiple gift cards for new players are available for download via my link. Use creator code Shesez to redeem a limited in-game pack. First come, first served. Stay active, and I'll see you in the game. And then lastly, there's this level where you have to find Miis in space. Panning it out can show you that the Earth is fully textured, though completely flat, and then housed in a giant space texture. But what's really cool is that taking the camera over to the side here can show you some shooting stars that are either unused or are only shown in much later stages in the game. Surprisingly, the camera won't work on every single minigame, which probably the most disappointing of the bunch being tanks. But much to my surprise, this minigame does use 3D models for basically everything. And moving the camera around will show you that none of this is 2D textures. Now for the Billiards, I just wanted to show you the city skyline and how it uses 3 different layers to pull off its background effect. But what's really interesting too is that there's a dedicated button to kind of show you a top view of the table. And if you take the camera all the way out like this, you can see that they have a duplicated 3D model that you can cull in and cull out at will. And for fishing, this is pretty cool. The fish are 2D textures. Shocking. No, the real interesting thing here is that the background kind of sits on an L shape, and there's in fact a white texture around the pond that rests above the white sky box down below. And when we move the camera at this angle, it becomes all the more apparent when it loses its camouflage effect. And then for charge, everything is made of yarn, and that includes the sky dome, which makes for a really cool looking visual here. But when I say everything is made of yarn, I mean literally everything. You see these wooden posts for the scarecrows? Yeah, it's actually yarn. If you look at it from this angle, you can see the yarn texture unstretched. But when it's on its side, what you're really looking at is just strings of yarn being stretched across the entire body. Also, that brown yarn surprisingly goes through the body as well. Not at all necessary when you look at it from the side like this, seeing as the pink yarn doesn't allow you to see any depth. And just about everything that's inside the model ends up coming to a point, which is kind of cool looking. Anyways, here's a zoom out of the barnyard area after you've completed the game. Now here's what the menu looks like for We Play Motion. Surprisingly, this time around, anytime a Mii is off camera, their bodies get culled out. But what's really funny is that the heads don't. So what you end up seeing by panning the camera out is a bunch of floating heads. And before we move on to the games themselves, there's a couple of things that you can see through the title screen. And by waiting on the title screen, you can see this here, which is like a kaleidoscope. And if you tilt the remote around, you can move the objects inside of the kaleidoscope. And by panning the camera out, you can see that there are actually a bunch of little squares that are projecting the same image of a couple of jewels. The other one is awesome. You get to make some bubbles in an open field with a mountain and a house in the background. So what I'll do here is I'll move the camera all the way over to give you a good look at the house, which has a really interesting pattern to it. But what's also kind of fascinating is that there's a low poly bird that flies off the screen, and because there was no way to pause, I had to slow down the footage as much as I possibly could, which reveals that the bird looks off. I don't know if it has eyes. It's kind of hard to tell, honestly. We're zooming it in here. It could just as easily be confused for just a giant mess of texture. Well, anyways, moving on. The ice cream cone stacking minigame. Obviously, it pans the camera up as you get more and more ice cream, and I just wanted to show you what that entire environment looks like in full. It's kind of cool that it gets a bit of a dome shape to represent the fact that a smaller scale environment looks super massive due to its curvature. Then we got Veggie Garden, which is probably my favorite one out of the group. See, here we can see what the moles are doing when they go underneath the ground. Some of them actually stay at the bottom of the hole until they get warped to a different area of the map. And another fascinating thing is this giant half cylinder. Why does it go on for so long? Well, the answer to that question is that there's different times of the day for this minigame. And so to pull off the effect of the day shifting, the developers decided to make this really ingenious texture, which only requires the cylinder to move up or down to adjust the time of day. Also, just to show you, the moon is fully modeled, as in it is not a flat texture. Instead, they opted for a jewel-like effect. And then for Skip Skimmer, you might be surprised to find out that there is no asset flipping for the houses in the background. Taking the camera over here will show you that the texture for these houses are different from the ones in that bubble screen. Also, if we take the camera underneath the water layer, you can see that it's highly detailed with lots of rocks and loose sticks. And then for Post Me Plus, notice this psychedelic background. Well, the way that they pulled off this effect is by making a candy corn-like shape to the entire environment, which allows the area to look like it has more depth than it actually has. For Trigger Twist, I wanted to show you the top of the mothership in the first level. And for the third level with the dinosaurs, I wanted to show you that this dinosaur doesn't have a full body, and that taking the camera underneath the environment will show you exactly where the neck stops. This one's one of my favorites. Jump Park has a roller coaster in the background, and it's way too far away and everything moves way too fast to ever see what the characters look like inside of the roller coaster carts. So taking the camera up to them and slowing the footage down will show you that they're kind of like Minecraft characters, featuring a square head, and square ears, and a square mouth. And I know a few of you will want to know this, so I'll share this with you. The premise of Spooky Search is that you point the remote behind you to try to feel for the ghosts that the game wants you to find. Panning the camera out though will show you that there are no ghosts back there. However, there is a particle effect that's used for while you're capturing the ghosts that gets stored out here instead. And then for Windrunner, we got the Miis here, and I just wanted to show you what it would look like if we turn the camera on its side for all these 2D textured Miis. It's not the most convincing effect, it's still really cool to break the immersion. And also, here's a zoom out of the first level of Windrunner. For Treasure Twirl, if you take the camera over, you can see that they use a separate model for the boat, one with a lot less detail to it, as it has absolutely nothing on top. And as your character descends downward into the ocean bottom, you can see that the rope is no longer attached to the boat as well. And in fact, if we take the character all the way back to the boat, you can see that he never was. Now, I didn't know if I'd have a lot to talk about with Star Shuttle, but there is something really fascinating. Since this version's in HD, it's a lot easier to show you that there's stuff written on the space station itself. The most common thing written is AC 1000-volt battery, which that's kind of interesting, but then there's one texture that's really hard to see, and it only spans around the blue part of the bottom of the ship, which again, it's a little hard to make out, but my best guess is that it says life server cosmology or life surge cosmology, which either one doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You can hit me up in the comments if you think you have a better idea of what it actually says. And also, I just want to show you the inside of this glass dome area, which has a bunch of textures for panels and stuff like that. And also zoom out the entire mini game so you can see that the planet has about 1/4 of an entire planet rather than a full sphere. And the last thing I want to show you is that the out of bounds here is kind of cool. When you get close enough, the game activates it and shows you, and what you get is basically a rectangular cuboid that fades out in front of the player. Anyways, that's what I got. Me and Snipey have been hitting the Friday marker every single Friday so far. Forgive me if we miss one or two. My advice to you, don't trust YouTube. Just keep checking back every single Friday, and hopefully we'll return the favor with some sweet new content. Appreciate all of you who watched the entire video to make it this far. Really means a lot, and I hope you have a good one.